The sky that day was pale, almost shy, as if the sun itself didn't want to intrude too much. A thin layer of fog hovered above the quiet street, softening the edges of the houses I'd known for years. The world felt paused, no traffic, no shouting kids, no distant horns. Just the low hum of electricity and the occasional crackle of someone else's heater bleeding through the walls. I stood by my living room window, mug of coffee warming my hands, watching my breath fog the glass. Christmas had always been complicated for me. Not sad exactly, just hollow. Like a tradition that no longer knew my name. My parents' calls were polite but distant. Friends were busy building lives that didn't leave much room for unanswered questions. And then there was him. Adam lived next door, 30-something, broad-shouldered, quiet in that distinctly masculine way that made people assume they already knew everything about him. He'd moved in about a year earlier. We exchanged nods, borrowed tools, brief conversations over the fence. He talked about work, about women he casually mentioned but never brought home. I told myself not to notice how his voice dropped when he laughed, or how his presence filled space without effort. Straight, married once, divorced now. That's what the neighborhood said. I'd learned to keep my distance, not just physically, but emotionally. Wanting the wrong person has a way of making you feel reckless, even when you've done nothing wrong. That morning, something felt off. Adam's house was dark. No Christmas lights. No faint glow from a tree in the window. No sound of music or television. It was strange, especially after weeks of him talking about how much he loved Christmas mornings, how they reminded him of simpler times. I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe he'd gone away. Maybe he was still asleep. Still, I kept looking. Then I heard it. A sound, sharp, brief. Not loud enough to be alarming, but wrong enough to pull my attention like a hook under the skin. Something metallic, maybe, or glass. It came from next door. I froze. Don't be ridiculous, I told myself. Old houses make noises. Pipes groan. Heat expands. But my chest tightened anyway, that familiar mix of curiosity and caution battling it out in silence. I slipped on my hoodie, my heart beating faster than it should for such an ordinary decision. The hallway felt colder than usual as I stepped outside. The air smelled like pine and smoke, distant fireplaces still burning from the night before. Adam's front door was slightly open. That alone should have been enough to make me turn back. I hesitated on the path, every instinct warning me to respect boundaries I'd already crossed 1,000 times in my head. I wasn't invited. I didn't belong there. Yet my feet moved forward anyway, guided by something darker than concern and more dangerous than curiosity. Adam, I called softly. No answer. I took one more step, unaware that whatever waited beyond that doorway, whatever I was about to see, would fracture the fragile version of normal I'd been clinging to. And in that moment, standing on his doorstep with Christmas bells faintly ringing somewhere down the street, I had no idea whether I was about to help my neighbor, or ruin both of us forever. What was he hiding behind that open door, and why did it feel like I was the one about to be exposed? The warmth inside his house hit me immediately, a sharp contrast to the cold outside. It smelled faintly of cedar and coffee, familiar, comforting, unsettling all at once. I stepped just inside the doorway, careful, like I was trespassing in more ways than one. You can still leave, I told myself. But my eyes were already adjusting, tracing the outlines of furniture I'd seen before through windows and quick visits. His jacket hung on the back of a chair. His boots were by the door. He was home, or at least, he had been. I closed the door gently behind me, the click echoing through the hallway. The house felt paused, like a breath being held too long. I moved deeper inside, each step deliberate. The living room was neat but not staged, blankets folded on the couch, a half-decorated Christmas tree standing in the corner, lights unplugged. No ornaments yet. That struck me as strange. Adam had talked about decorating early, about how he liked the ritual of it. I told myself not to read into things I didn't understand. Then I heard it again. A sound, this time unmistakable. A low thud from upstairs, followed by what might have been a muffled curse. My heart jumped. Adam, I called, my voice betraying me now. Yeah. His voice cracked off halfway, rough and distracted. Just. Give me a second. Relief washed through me, quickly followed by something else I didn't want to name. I stayed where I was, staring at the staircase. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't be here. Yet the simple fact that he'd answered anchored me in place. Footsteps moved above me. Slow, uneven. I swallowed. He appeared at the top of the stairs a moment later, one hand gripping the railing. His hair was wet, curling slightly at the ends, like he'd just stepped out of the shower. He was breathing harder than expected, chest rising and falling beneath an open robe he clearly hadn't tied properly. For half a second, neither of us spoke. "Oh," he said finally, surprise flickering across his face. "Hey, I didn't hear you knock." "I did," I said. "I mean, I knocked, and the door was open, and I heard something, so." "So you broke in?" he asked, but there was no real accusation in his voice. Just a tired edge. "I was worried," I said, and realized it was true. He studied me for a moment, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion written into his posture. Then his shoulders dropped slightly. "Sorry," he muttered. "I didn't mean to scare anyone." Something about the way he said anyone lingered in the air between us. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah." Slipped. Stupid socks. He attempted a smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Didn't expect company on Christmas morning." "Neither did I admitted. He hesitated, then gestured vaguely behind him. "You might as well come in properly. Since you're already trespassing." I followed him up the stairs, acutely aware of how close we were now. The space between us felt charged, every step amplifying details I'd tried hard not to notice before, the tension in his shoulders, the way his robe shifted when he moved, the faint scar just visible near his collarbone. "Stop," I told myself. "This is not what this is." His bedroom door was open. Steam lingered in the air, curling like a secret that hadn't decided whether to escape. Towels were scattered across the bed. One lay on the floor, damp and forgotten. "Sorry about the mess," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't planning on seeing anyone today. That makes two of us." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He looked at me then, really looked, and something unreadable passed between us. I shifted my weight, suddenly hyper-aware of my own body, my own presence in his space. "I can go," I said quickly. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved toward the dresser, opening a drawer, closing it again without taking anything out. "You ever notice," he said slowly, "how quiet Christmas mornings are when you're alone?" The question caught me off guard. "Yeah," I said. "I've noticed." He nodded, like that was all the confirmation he needed. "I thought I'd be somewhere else this year," he admitted. "Thought things would look different." I leaned against the doorframe, careful not to step any further in. "Plans change, or fall apart," he corrected, a hint of bitterness slipping through. The silence stretched. It wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy. My eyes drifted, against my will, to the window behind him. The fog outside had thickened, blurring the world into soft shapes and shadows. It felt like we were suspended, cut off from time. "I didn't see your lights on," I said quietly. "That's why I got worried." He followed my gaze. "Didn't feel like pretending today." There it was again, that sense that something deeper lay just beneath the surface, something he wasn't saying. "Pretending what?" I asked. He laughed softly, but it sounded hollow. "That everything's fine. That I'm exactly who people think I am." My pulse quickened. "I didn't mean," I started. "I know," he interrupted gently. "You didn't mean anything." But his eyes lingered on me now, searching, measuring. I became acutely aware of the way the robe hung open at his chest, the way he hadn't moved to close it. He'd crawled up my neck, followed by guilt. This was dangerous territory, not because of what was happening, but because of what could. "I should go," I said again, though my feet remained planted. He exhaled slowly. "You don't have to. Not yet." The words echoed louder than they should have. A floorboard creaked beneath his weight as he shifted closer, just a step. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Do you ever," he asked quietly, "feel like you're living half a life?" I swallowed hard. "All the time." His gaze didn't waver. For a second, I thought he might say something else, something irreversible. Instead, a sharp sound cut through the moment. A phone buzzing on the nightstand. We both startled, the spell snapping instantly. Adam glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "Sorry," he said, turning away. "I need to take this." I nodded, relief and disappointment colliding in my chest. "Of course." I stepped back toward the stairs as he answered the call, his voice dropping, guarded now. I didn't catch the words, but the tension in his tone was unmistakable. As I reached the bottom step, I paused, glancing back once more. He stood there, half-dressed, half-hidden, caught between worlds, between who he was and who he was expected to be. And I realized with a jolt of fear and longing that whatever line we'd approached that morning, it hadn't disappeared. It had only been waiting. If this was just the beginning, what would happen the next time the door opened? I stood at the bottom of the stairs longer than I should have, my hand resting on the cold banister, listening to the muted cadence of Adam's voice upstairs. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I could hear the tone, tight, controlled, like someone holding a door shut with their back while something heavy pushed from the other side. "Yes," he said at one point. Then, after a pause, "I told you, I'm home." Another pause. Longer this time. "No, I'm not alone." My stomach dropped. I should have walked out then. That would have been the sensible thing. The respectful thing. But my feet refused to move, rooted by a sickening blend of fear and curiosity. Whoever was on the other end of that call mattered. That much was clear. And somehow, without knowing how, I had been pulled into the center of something I didn't understand. The call ended abruptly. A moment later, Adam appeared at the top of the stairs again. His expression had changed, guarded, tense, his jaw set like he was bracing for impact. The robe was gone now. He'd pulled on a loose t-shirt and jeans, but the effort to appear normal only made the cracks more visible. "You're still here," he said quietly. "I can go," I replied immediately. I didn't mean to overhear anything. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his face with both hands. "No, it's fine. Stay, please." The word please landed harder than anything else he could have said. He came down the stairs slowly, stopping a few steps away from me. The space between us felt charged, electric. Close enough that I could see the faint redness in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly before he shoved them into his pockets. "That was my ex-wife," he said. "Oh," I breathed. "She's with family this year. Got nostalgic, I guess." He laughed without humor. "Or suspicious." "Suspicious of what?" He hesitated. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. "Of me," he said finally. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Adam, I know what people think," he continued, words spilling out now like he couldn't stop them. "What I'm supposed to be. What I've always been. The story's already written, right?" I didn't answer. I was afraid that if I spoke, I'd say too much. He took a step closer. "Do you know how exhausting it is," he asked softly, "to perform your own life?" The question felt personal, invasive, and painfully familiar. "Yes," I admitted. "I do." Our eyes locked. Something shifted in that moment, subtle but irreversible. The air felt heavier, like the house itself was listening. "I saw the way you look at me," he said quietly. My breath caught. "Adam." "And I should have shut it down," he went on. "I should have kept pretending I didn't notice. That it didn't matter." "Why didn't you?" I asked, barely above a whisper. His gaze dropped, then lifted again. "Because part of me wanted to be seen." The confession cracked something open inside me. Fear surged first, sharp and immediate. Fear of being wrong. Fear of crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But beneath it was something warmer, more dangerous. Longing. "I don't want to be a mistake," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He flinched, just slightly. "You wouldn't be. You don't know that," I replied. "What you're talking about, it's not small. It changes things." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm terrified." The honesty in his voice stripped away any illusion I'd been clinging to. This wasn't a fantasy. This wasn't harmless curiosity. This was real, and messy, and capable of leaving scars. I took a step back. "Then maybe we should stop." He nodded once, sharply. "Maybe." Neither of us moved. Outside, the church bells rang again, louder this time, closer. Christmas morning announcing itself to the world while everything inside this house felt suspended in a fragile, dangerous pause. Adam laughed softly, shaking his head. God, listen to us. Like two people standing on the edge of something, arguing about gravity. I swallowed. Gravity doesn't ask permission. No, he agreed. It just pulls. Another step. This time from me. My heart was racing now, every instinct screaming that this was a bad idea. That I would regret it. That he would regret it even more. Yet there was a strange calm settling over me too, a sense that whatever happened next, it would be honest. I don't want to be your secret, I said. He met my gaze, unwavering. I don't want to have secrets anymore. The words hung between us, fragile and dangerous. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out, not touching me yet, just close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the tension in his restraint. My breath stuttered. I didn't pull away. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. I opened my mouth. No sound came out. That was answer enough. His hand dropped back to his side, the moment breaking not with impact, but with restraint. The lack of contact somehow felt more intimate than anything else could have. A sudden knock echoed through the house. 3 sharp raps at the front door. We both jolted back as if burned. Adam swore under his breath. What the hell? Another knock. Louder. My heart slammed against my ribs. Are you expecting someone? No, he said, already moving toward the door. I'm not. He paused, hand on the handle, glancing back at me. The look in his eyes was raw, unsettled, full of things neither of us had said. Whatever happens next, he murmured, I need you to know this wasn't nothing. Before I could respond, he opened the door. A woman's voice filled the hallway, familiar, sharp, and unmistakably real. Adam, she said, we need to talk. I stood frozen in the shadows, my presence unannounced, my heart pounding as the consequences of the morning finally caught up to us. And as I listened to her step inside the house, I realized with a sickening clarity that whatever we'd awakened between us could no longer be contained. The question wasn't if everything would change, but how much damage would be done when the truth finally came out. Adam's ex-wife, Lena, carried the cold in with her, the sharp scent of winter clinging to her coat. Snow melted off her boots onto the hardwood floor, each drop loud in the silence. She looked around the house as if it still belonged to her, eyes cataloging details with practiced familiarity. I stayed where I was, half hidden near the staircase, my pulse thudding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Did I interrupt something? She asked, her gaze flicking briefly past Adam's shoulder. No, Adam said too quickly. Then he slowed himself. I mean, no, just a neighbor checking in. Her eyes found me then. The pause was small, almost polite. But it was long enough to register everything. The tension in my posture, the way Adam stood just slightly in front of me, like a barrier that hadn't existed before this morning. A neighbor, she repeated, testing the word. I nodded. I heard a noise. The door was open. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. On Christmas morning, Adam cleared his throat. What are you doing here, Lena? The question landed harder than it should have. It wasn't hostile, just weary. Like a boundary he was too tired to defend properly. She sighed, pulling off her gloves. I called. You said you weren't alone. I didn't say who I was with, he replied. No, she agreed. You didn't. Her gaze drifted back to me, more curious than accusing now. Something calculating stirred behind her expression. I felt suddenly exposed, like I'd walked into the wrong scene of a play and everyone else knew the script. I should go, I said softly. Adam turned toward me, startled, as if he'd forgotten I could still choose. You don't have to. Yes, Lena said gently. He probably does. The words weren't cruel. That somehow made them worse. I grabbed my jacket from the chair, my hands clumsy, my chest tight. Adam watched me, jaw clenched, conflict written into every line of his face. He wanted to say something, stay, or wait, or I'm sorry. I didn't know which scared me more. At the door, I paused. I'm glad you're okay, I said, forcing the words out. That's all. Our eyes met one last time. In his, I saw regret tangled with relief, fear braided tightly with something unfinished. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. I stepped outside before either of them could stop me. The cold hit hard, sharp enough to make my eyes sting. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing a pale blue sky that looked too innocent for what had just happened. Somewhere down the street, laughter rang out, children tearing into presents, families wrapped in warmth and certainty. I walked back to my house slowly, every step heavy. Inside, the silence felt different now. Louder. Charged. I set my jacket down and leaned against the door, closing my eyes as the morning replayed itself in fragments, his voice on the stairs, the confession in his eyes, the way he'd almost reached for me and then hadn't. Almost. That word lodged itself deep in my chest. I wondered what Lena had seen. What she suspected. Whether she'd sensed the shift, the subtle but irreversible change in the way Adam stood, the way his attention had bent toward me like something pulled by gravity. And I wondered what Adam was doing now. Was he explaining, denying, retreating back into the version of himself that felt safer, simpler, more acceptable? Or was he standing in that hallway, staring at the door I'd just closed, realizing that pretending had finally become unbearable? My phone buzzed. A text. From Adam. I didn't plan for this. I don't know what I'm doing. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, heart pounding. Neither did I. Outside, church bells rang again, marking the hour. Christmas morning moving forward whether we were ready or not. I typed 3 different responses. Deleted them all. In the end, I sent nothing. Some moments don't resolve neatly. Some connections don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. They linger, quiet, heavy, waiting for the next crack in the world where they might surface again. I set the phone face down and looked out the window at his house. The lights were still off, and I couldn't tell if that meant the story was over, or if it was only just beginning. The days after Christmas blurred together in a way that felt unreal, like time had lost its edges. Adam didn't avoid me, but he didn't seek me out either. That, somehow, was worse. Our routines overlapped again in small, ordinary ways. Trash day. Mornings when we both left at the same time. Evenings when the porch lights flicked on one by one. From the outside, nothing had changed. 2 neighbors. Polite nods. Casual hellos. But every glance carried weight now. The first time I saw him after that morning, he was standing by his mailbox, shoulders tense, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up when he sensed me, surprise flashing across his face before he masked it. Hey, he said when he hung up. Hey. One word. Neutral. Careful. There was a bruise blooming along his jaw, faint but unmistakable, like something he hadn't meant to explain. I noticed his hand twitch when he caught me looking. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said automatically. Then, after a pause, yeah. Silence settled between us, thick and awkward. So many things crowded the space, questions I couldn't ask, answers I wasn't sure I wanted. I wondered if Lena knew, if she suspected, or if Adam had folded himself back into the shape everyone expected. I should get going, he said finally. Right, I replied, though I hadn't planned to go anywhere. He hesitated, as if waiting for something, for me to say don't, or talk to me, or I miss you even though nothing ever happened. But I said none of it. Neither did he. He walked away. That night, I lay awake listening to the wall we shared. Every sound from next door felt amplified, footsteps, the low murmur of a television, the creak of floorboards. I imagined him moving through his house alone, replaying the same moments I was trapped in. Almost touching, almost honest, almost free. My phone buzzed again, just after midnight. I keep thinking about that morning, his message read. About what I didn't say. I closed my eyes. Me too, I typed. Then deleted it. Instead, I wrote, some things change even if nothing happens. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. That's what scares me, he finally sent. I stared at the words, my chest tight. Fear was honest. Fear meant he hadn't erased it, hadn't rewritten the moment into something harmless. So what do we do? I asked. There was no reply. The next morning, his house was dark again. No car in the driveway. No movement behind the windows. I told myself it meant nothing, that people leave, People return, lives continue. Still, the absence pressed down on me. By evening, a single light flickered on upstairs. I stood by my window, watching the glow cut through the dusk, wondering if he was doing the same from the other side of the wall. Wondering if we were both waiting for someone to make the first irreversible move. Christmas was over. The world had gone back to normal. But whatever had started between us hadn't found an ending yet. And as I turned off my own lights, leaving the room in darkness, one question refused to let me rest. Was that morning a warning? Or an invitation neither of us had the courage to accept yet? A thin winter sun hovered behind grey clouds, washing the street in pale light. The houses stood still, trimmed with blinking decorations and wreaths that looked overly cheerful against the cold. Somewhere nearby, a radio played carols faintly, the sound drifting in and out like a memory I didn't fully trust. I woke later than usual, alone, the way I had learned to be. The house felt too quiet, every sound amplified, the kettle clicking on, the heater sighing, the floorboards whispering beneath my bare feet. Christmas had never been cruel to me, but it had a habit of reminding me what I didn't have. From my kitchen window, I could see my neighbor's house. Adam's house. Normally, his place was the loudest on the block during the holidays. Lights strung early, music playing too late, the faint sound of movement, proof that someone else was living a fuller version of the season. He'd told me once, casually, like it didn't matter, that Christmas mornings were his favorite. That morning, his house was dark. No lights, no movement, no sound. I told myself not to think about it. I stirred sugar into my coffee and watched the steam rise, letting routine calm me. Adam was straight, divorced, friendly in the safe, distant way neighbors were supposed to be. Whatever curiosity I'd felt about him over the past year was something I kept tightly folded away. Still, my eyes kept drifting back to his front door. He probably went away, I thought. Family, friends, somewhere warmer. Then I heard it, a noise, brief, sharp, like something falling, or breaking. I froze, mug halfway to my lips. The sound came again, duller this time. Followed by silence. My heart began to beat faster than the moment deserved. Old houses made noises. I knew that, yet unease crept in anyway, curling low in my stomach. I grabbed my hoodie, telling myself I was being responsible, nothing more. The cold bit into my skin as I stepped outside. The air smelled like frost and pine needles, and the street was empty, peaceful in a way that felt staged. Adam's front door was slightly open. I stopped at the edge of his walkway, my breath visible now. Every instinct told me to turn back, to respect the invisible line between concern and intrusion. But another part of me, the quieter, more dangerous one, leaned forward. Adam, I called. No answer. The door creaked softly when I nudged it, the sound echoing into the house like a confession. Warm air spilled out, carrying the scent of soap and something familiar I couldn't name. I hesitated on the threshold, my pulse loud in my ears. This is a bad idea, I thought. Yet I stepped inside anyway, unaware that this simple choice, this single step forward, was about to unravel everything I thought I understood about him. About myself, and about what happens when a secret finally starts looking for daylight.